The A4 Skyhawk was a great Navy plane. It was also flown by the Israeli Air Force and some other overseas air forces. Light fighter bomber. They call it the Scooter, although it's still pretty good size, but when you compare it to an F-14, it's pretty small. Over here they've got an F-100. It's one of my favorites from the 60s. Great performer in Vietnam. I also saw the F-100 fly with the Thunderbirds in the late 60s. That was pretty amazing. At Griffith Air Force Base in New York. Got a few helicopters in the collection as well. F-100 Super Sabre there. I don't know too much about the Kaman helicopters, but they had that double rotor configuration on most of them, and the Husky was a pretty well-known rescue helicopter in the 60s and 70s. They added, a couple years ago, they added an F-14 to the collection here, F-14 Tomcat, made famous in the Top Gun movie, served with the Navy aircraft carrier fleet for, I don't know, something like 20 years, from I think 1972 to, well, I don't know, late 90s, even early 2000s, they were still flying. Huge airplane. It's just amazing to see how big that thing is, the fact that they land that on an aircraft. All right, where were we? Looking at the AH-1 Cobra. It's an Army attack helicopter from the Vietnam era. Carried a gunner and a pilot in the back seat, gunner in the front, I believe, and was derived from the Huey, which was first used in the attack role. This was designed to be a dedicated attack helicopter. Going over to the Hound Dog and the, where are we going? Yeah. Hound Dog missile over there near the doors. That was an unmanned, kind of basically an early cruise missile. Again, from the 60s area. It was carried by B-52 bombers for a standoff attack role. Just seeing the nose of it there in front of the nose of the F-86 Sabre. I'm kind of out of sync. Cool. F-86 Sabre, which served with distinction in the Korean War. Okay. Moving over to the F-6F Hellcat. One of my personal favorite airplanes of the World War II era. Entered service in 1943, but it accounted for 75% of the kills in the Pacific War against the Japanese. Very formidable aircraft. Sister aircraft in that era was the F-4U Corsair, made famous by Baba Blacksheep, the Marines flying it in the Pacific, but also served from carriers. Also quite a large airplane. It's great to see these airplanes, see how big they are. Coming over here to the B-25. This was considered a medium bomber in World War II. It was used in a lot of different roles. The most famous one was the early 1942 attack of where they launched a number of the B-25s from the aircraft carrier Hornet, I believe it was, in the Pacific, and attacked the Japanese home islands, Tokyo, and other areas very early in the war, and kind of brought the war over to the Japanese when the Americans weren't having too much success with it yet. And there, over near the front of the hangar, this is a P-47. And that was an Army aircraft. It was flown mostly in the fighter bomber role, although it also could serve as a long-range escort fighter. Great fighter, very heavy, great in a dive. Not so good in climbing, I believe. I saw Hound Dog missiles on B-52s when I went to an open house in Plattsburgh Air Force Base around 1968. We up there for Armed Forces Day. I was amazed. It's like an airplane carried by the B-52. Pretty cool. Assume there's no nuclear warheads installed in this one. F-86, beautiful airplane. I love that aluminum surface on that F-86 and F-100. It was a pretty big airplane for the early 50s. Only 5,900 pounds of thrust, but still managed to do about 700 miles an hour. Hellcat's one of my favorite fighters, especially since I read that book by Barrett Tillman, that Hellcat's book. It's just probably the best all-around fighter in the Navy in the World War II era. Simple and rugged. Talking like I'm an experienced Hellcat flyer. Only in Sims. But the Marines, the Hellcat was probably pretty hard to land in terms of visibility, but the Corsair was terrible because the cockpit was so far back, and it was canted up at such an angle for the large prop that at first the Navy said it was unsuitable for carrier operations. It was really hard to get on board the aircraft carrier. So the early squadrons, the early aircraft went to the Marine squadrons. Of course, Baba Black Sheep and all of that, they made good use of them, but they were landing pretty much on islands, not on aircraft carriers. The Navy eventually did get them on carriers too. Tough to fly, good airplane. The gull wing. The gull wing was also an accommodation to the large prop and the large engine because it enabled them to get the fuselage up a bit higher to provide more clearance for the prop. Imagine when it's ready in takeoff attitude with the fuselage level. That prop is going to be pretty close to the ground. Wow. B-25 Mitchell. This is the one that Jimmy Doolittle took off from an aircraft carrier in 1942 and bombed Tokyo. Famous Doolittle raids. Pretty big airplane to have on an aircraft carrier. Just barely could get off the deck, but they managed to pull it off. We are with the B-29 Superfortress. It's the biggest bomber of World War II. And of course, one of the most famous ones was the Enola Gay, which dropped the first atomic bomb on Hiroshima in August 1945, leading up to, well, they dropped one more and then it pretty much ended the war. This is not the Enola Gay, but this is another B-29, and it's in really beautiful condition. You can really see the silver, the bare aluminum finish that they used on it, and a lot of the details as you get closer to it.